Hi everyone, I'm Jim Oberst, and in this video I'll show you how I painted my watercolor painting, River View, step by step. I start with a simple drawing on a piece of paper that has been wet and then dried on the surface. Then I re-wet the paper surface so that the sky, field, and water go on smoothly. I usually paint heaven and earth first, but leave any parts of the painting that will remain white or very light unpainted. Except for the sky, these first washes of paint are light and will form a base for darker paint applied later. Before painting the background hills, I partially dry that part of the paper. I want the hills to have a soft, slightly fuzzy edge so they look distant, but I don't want to lose their edge completely. As I paint the hills, I'm careful to paint around the buildings and to leave some other random white areas. This is known as negative painting. You can see the white building shapes popping out of the blue-violet color of the distant hills. Next, I add dark foliage at the horizon line between and around the building shapes. Because the hills are still damp, the tops of the foliage soften and spread, giving it a realistic look. Then I strengthen the color of the field. The paper is beginning to dry, which causes it to shrink and lift from the backing board, so I clip the edges to hold it down. I then dry the entire surface of the paper, so when I paint the trees and buildings I get crisp, clean edges. I begin painting the trees with a round brush, alternating dark and light browns for interest. I then switch to a limp dagger brush, which makes it easier to paint natural-looking branches and twigs. I'm not painting the base of the trees carefully because I plan to cover them with some dark, thick foliage. When I'm finished with the tree structure, I do a little scraping with a credit card to give the trees a rough, weathered look. I paint the roofs of the main building shape a bright color to encourage the viewer's eye to go there. The contrast between that and the white siding also helps. Next, I add some dark foliage along the horizon line and in front of the buildings. Now it's time for the heavy foliage in the foreground at the edge of the river. I've decided to use bright, varied colors here and later in the tree foliage to give this painting a striking appearance. I'm again using negative painting to indicate rocks at the edge of the river in front of the foliage. I finish with some scraping and thin brush strokes to suggest weeds, and also add some dull color and a few cracks to the rocks. Now a few shadows on the buildings. Now I'll add foliage to those tree limbs and branches. I'm again exaggerating the color to make this painting more whimsical than realistic. I let the wet colors blend together on the paper and leave lots of rough edges to give the impression of leaves. Next, I indicate a few windows, doors, and chimneys on the buildings. And suddenly, they look like someplace one could actually live. Now I re-wet the water area so I can paint soft edge reflections of all that colorful foliage. I also do a little vertical scraping to strengthen the look of reflections and to capture the reflections of the rocks. I darken the shoreline further and add some horizontal lines to the water to make it look flat. I touch up a few things, some marks in the field and some verticals, telephone poles among the buildings. Finally, I dry the painting and sign it. I hope you found this demo interesting, and if you're a watercolor artist, useful. Thanks for watching. Please visit my website at jimoberst.com to see more of my paintings. If you sign up for my fine art newsletter there, you'll also receive some valuable free gifts via email.